Hi everyone, my name's Haley Anderton, and for my leadership interview, I chose to interview Scott Moffatt. Scott is a personal mentor and staff member at the campus ministry that I'm involved in called Doulos. Doulos is a student-led organization specifically for students that are involved in Greek life at the University of Florida. The vision of Doulos is to build a spiritual legacy in every house to reach UF Greeks, the campus, and the world for Christ. And the mission is to build up those who have a personal relationship with God and share Christ with those who don't. I chose Scott because he has been an influential leader in my life for the past 4 years at UF, and I've seen the significant effects of his leadership because I have watched so many people develop and mature, including myself, under his influence. My perceptions of Scott while I was interviewing him, although he's familiar, I still feel like I felt that he was humble and that he was dedicated. I always forget that he has a wife and 5 children at home, and so it's amazing to me how he remains so invested in this ministry, and every day he's spending time mentoring college students. So just taking time out of his week to really invest in what he does, and that's very evident in talking to him. So some key leadership characteristics that Scott and I discussed was that a leader needs to be a servant. They need to be humble, but they need to be bold and persistent, and also confident in their abilities. They also need to encourage, be able to encourage and empower the people that they're leading. They need to be open to feedback and quick to listen. And so my perception of Scott as a leader, after this interview, is that he does really care deeply, not only about the mission and the vision of Doulos, but also he deeply overall cares about the development and growth of the leaders that are under him. So he puts the people over the program because he recognizes that the value of the students under him and their own personal growth is going to make a much bigger impact than just, getting a task completed. He knows that the success of the program is dependent on the student's willingness, in the amount of personal ownership that student is taking in the mission, and so he seeks to kind of foster that, encourage that amongst his students. I also sense that Scott is really self-aware, and so he really knows what his strengths are, and he's also very aware of what his weaknesses are, and is transparent. He was transparent with me about what those were, but also he makes sure to be transparent with those that he is leading, in the ways that he falls short as a leader, because it's showing that he is constantly in this learning process of leadership as well, but he's constantly in the habit of humbling himself and learning more about how to lead other people well, which is making him a greater leader in the long run. So I have been serving in some way under Scott for about 4 years now, and so I've learned immensely from him throughout just serving under him and his leadership and the way that he's mentored me personally. But in this interview, we kind of nailed down some key statements that he made that really just helped put it all together for me in terms of how to lead on a practical level. And so we really just talked about the importance of being a servant leader and the importance of humility. So specifically, Scott recalled a time where he spoke publicly about someone that kind of undermined their character, and it came off in a judgmental manner, and it was, in front of a lot of people, and so he was called out on it, and instead of becoming defensive, he prayed about it, he swallowed his pride, and he realized he was in the wrong in the situation, that this should have not been, this was a mistake. And so he apologized to that person, and he made sure to do it publicly because he made that mistake publicly. So he made sure to come back around and go to that person and apologize, and I thought that was a really cool way to be a leader when it comes to conflict management. And that also further shows Scott's just diligence in being transparent and also humble, being able to admit that he doesn't have all the answers, but able to learn from his mistakes, which is just such a big part of the process of leadership. So the next key topic that we talked about as far as just practical ways to be a good leader is just the concept of sustainability. Scott told me that he does not want to leave UF anytime soon, but he wants to lead in a way that would allow him the freedom to get up and move at any time. he said it's unhealthy for an organization to rely totally on its leader. And so he needs to equip the people following him so that if he needs to get up and go, he can, and feel confident that the organization will run just as well and even better than he began it. And so in order to combat just this feeling that everything is on him and that he has to get everything completed, he is really intentional about delegating to the people under him. He's perceptive of different people's giftings, and so he delegates intentionally based on what he has researched and felt to be that person's gifts and skill set, and he uses encouragement and words of affirmation to empower and equip the students he supervises to use those gifts and involve themselves completely in the organization. And so those people feel valued, and so they are more willing to be as dedicated as he is. When they feel like their gifts are being used and valued and he is fostering that culture, people want to respond, and they're developing as well. And finally, Scott is great at setting vision. He says in leadership meetings, it's always really important for him to ask his team questions that get them back to the core of the mission, vision, and the core values of the organization. He's not just talking about, how can we complete these tasks to get to this goal, and that's it. No, he wants to push the students to think critically and more deeply about the actual physical task that they're completing. And this allows, because that task, is contributing to a greater context. It's having a greater purpose. And so he wants the students to realize that. And it allows for a culture where students are proactive and dedicated and less likely to experience burnout because they're constantly going back to, why are we doing this? And so he's challenging people to think deep. And so vision setting is a really, really important part of that. So, just reflecting on this interview, I was really thankful for the opportunity to be able to, get practical advice from someone that I have seen as a mentor of myself and my peers for so long. And just some key takeaways is just how Scott reiterated the importance of being a servant leader and being more about the people that you're serving and leading than about yourself or whatever your goal or mission is, to really place significance on the people that are following you, their personal growth and development within this leadership process. And that's going to grow you in turn. And so, yeah, just focusing on being humble and transparent with those under you, and just encouraging them and equipping them with the tools to continue on the mission without you even being there. I think that was just the biggest takeaway for me, and I'm excited to continue to add these skills into all that I've learned in this course when it comes to leadership. So thanks for listening.